Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 1023 has leaked. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. Man, this chapter was absolutely unbelievable. I got halfway through the chapter and thought to myself, man, I'm only halfway through the chapter. I reached what I thought was like the end of the chapter, and then I was like, oh wait, no, we're not actually done. We switched between 5 or 6 scenes and everything was just That's how I felt. But you know how we do this. When the chapter is dense, we're just going to take it from the beginning and go. I would say the beginning half of the chapter focused around Sanji and Zoro, and the levels of fan service is just absurd. But what's interesting about this, and I do find this to be interesting, is a lot of people are going to take this chapter as a confirmation of various theories. But it's not an actual confirmation, it's a quasi-confirmation, like Oda is hinting that the theories are right, but he doesn't explicitly say, yes, this is the answer in any case, which just leaves room. It's one of those things where, Oda's aware of theories, one way or another, whether he reads them or his team does. I think Oda has an objective, basically, of surpassing our expectations, and so that requires you to know our expectations in the first place. I understand we're starting here pretty vague, but I just find this to be interesting, right, where there's limitations of being in Weekly Shonen Jump. I would say that some of the best storytelling for me personally to enjoy is long movies, or just movies in general, as well as books, because you don't get a lot of time to think about what's happening. So there's a lot, the stories are obviously very big, but rather than just sit on a chapter for weeks or months or potentially years, you just finish the book. It's given to you in one slice, and you can consume manga that way as well, right? You can binge, and honestly, for a lot of people, I recommend that you do binge, because some people, simply that's the way that they enjoy stories. But that's obviously not the only way that, and it's particularly on our channel, right, the way that the people that would watch my videos interact with One Piece. It's a very weekly thing, and so, things are so drawn out, you have so much time to think about it, that the battle that the author has to play with the audience is just different. But anyway, the reason that I bring this up is because the beginning of the chapter focused on Sanji and Zoro, and we got some amazing action bits, which I don't usually talk about. In this chapter, I'm not going to talk about, but of course it was awesome. But the two things which really have me hyped up are quasi-confirmed theories, things that we have been waiting for. In the case of Sanji for over a decade, very near, it's been a long time, okay? And then Zoro and his lineage, his heritage. So, let's talk about Sanji first. Sanji is dodging Queen's laser beams, and he says, Zoro asks what's wrong, and Sanji says nothing. It's just, since my second time using the raid suit, I've been feeling kinda off. Zoro's like, you're not gonna slow me down, are ya? And Sanji's like, I said it's nothing, my body just feels a little odd. And then Zoro jokes, well, you do have weird eyebrows. And then a little bit down in the chapter, Queen says, I remember now, all of Judge's brats are enhanced after seeing Sanji use his fire attack. That bastard's crazy. That burning leg of yours is some kind of augmentation, right? And Sanji's like, hate to break it to you, but I'm a regular human, unlike my siblings. And Queen's like, are you stupid? What kind of human can burst into flames? It's not like you're a Lunarian. And then you have King aside with a ... and Sanji, it's possible because my passions burn hotter than any real flame ever could. So I think that you can see it's fairly evident why this is a quasi-confirmed theory. We have what is essentially the implication itself of what is taking place here. Essentially, Queen is telling us that humans can't catch fire, that's ridiculous, right? We also know that the Vinsmoke are genetically enhanced. Sanji didn't get any of these, but his body is feeling weird, so they might be unlocking. Then we have a connection between the Lunarians, King's race, and Sanji. Maybe Sanji has been implanted with DNA, experimented on, or taken from Lunarians. That's why he can catch fire. And it's worth pointing out that Sanji tells Zoro that his body is feeling weird, and then Zoro jokes that, well, you do have swirly eyebrows, which is obviously a joke, but also we know the swirly eyebrows is kind of the tell of genetic enhancements. That's what all the Vinsmoke children have, including Sanji, even though his turned the other way. But at the same time, even though this is like the straight up implication, it's almost a reveal. right? That's how everybody feels. This is a reveal of the truth about Sanji. Sanji contradicts it and says, no, I'm regular human. I can burst into fire because my passions are so much hotter than any real flame could ever be. There may be some people new to the community who don't realize just how heated this debate has been over the years, but I just find it kind of comical now looking at it, how the community thinks now, how Oda has manipulated everybody in some of the discussion beforehand. Beforehand, if you said that Sanji's Diable Jambe was created by any other means than friction, then you pretty much got downvoted, or at least you got ratioed. Sanji had to spin pre-time skip in order to create the power, therefore it's friction, but it wasn't actually ever stated. That was a theory unto itself. And now these people who think this probably don't feel too confident. If for no other reason than Queen says that Sanji can create fire because of genetic enhancements, and Sanji himself, the person who actually has the power, explains that it's possible because his passions burn hotter than any real flame ever could. He doesn't even mention friction. So, in my opinion, guys, the friction theory is dead. Rest in peace. We're now left with two options, and yes, I say two options, not one. Genetic enhancements, or what Sanji says about his passions is actually the case. As I said, quasi-confirmed theory, and Oda's in a position to really mess with us and do something different. We could go with basically what the implication of the chapter is, which is that he's genetically enhanced, and if that ends up happening, I'm for it, absolutely. I think that it's incredibly hype. But at the same time, you have to recognize that this chapter didn't just hint it, it revealed it. Because from this point forward, Oda is clearly trying to make this be our headcanon. There's no other way to spin the chapter. So if we do get a moment later where it is officially confirmed that Sanji is genetically modified, aside from whatever other powers he might have because of that, the actual Diable Jambe being explained, it won't be as hyped. Literally, Oda's gotta turn it into, oh, here's Sanji's new power related to genetic enhancements, thereby confirming, so it's not, you understand what I'm saying? The hype of the explanation of Sanji's flames itself is now, if that's true, which is kind of a bit of a tease because he didn't actually confirm it. But, in terms of manipulation, right? One of the clear examples of this is what Oda chooses for Queen to say in this chapter, which is that humans can't catch fire. What kind of ridiculous is that? Ridiculousness, okay? Well, yeah, that's generally true, but there's also other characters in the One Piece story that can also catch fire that wouldn't have had their genetics manipulated or modified. They're not the children of Judge Vinsmoke. Person of note who can do that is Luffy. Luffy's Red Hawk ability, he's able to catch fire even underwater. So Queen's sort of operating on this assumption of, well, humans can't catch fire, therefore, and you're Vinsmoke, therefore this must be the case, but must it? I don't know. So there's still some intrigue around this. Of course, Sanji could just be in denial, right? Sanji doesn't really accept the Vinsmoke side of himself, his father, anything associated with this. We've seen this a little bit with the raid suit, although he will wear it, although we haven't seen him wear it recently. But, it's like if you tried to tell Sanji, hey, your powers are because of your lineage, because of the Vinsmoke, I think you'd be more likely to have Sanji sort of reject that and sort of claim the power for himself on his own, which is pretty much what's happened. He's like, the Vinsmoke have nothing to do with this. I'm a normal human. It's just because my passions burn hot. But he could be in denial. And that would make a lot of narrative sense and could be working up towards a really cool character model. But at the same time, Sanji could actually be right in that the source of his flames is his emotion. His passion. We've talked about emotion a lot recently. I think that it has something to do with this arc, like joy and laughter and things like that. The argument, in fact, has been made very, very recently from Raizo as he fights Fukurokuju, right? That emotion is a strength, not a weakness. And Oda could take this literally if he wanted to. Certainly the argument is right here. And Sanji has on multiple occasions, earlier taken as joke, literally burst into flame when he feels passion, right, relating to Nami or whatever. It's happened. But, it's like, well, Luffy has a similar ability that hasn't fully been explained, right? So how does Luffy create fire? Well, maybe it has to do with the emotions associated with losing Ace, carrying Ace's will. And so then you sort of connect Luffy's flames with Sanji's and they're similar. And this leads to sort of a burgeoning kind of power that we've theorized a lot in the past, essentially like soul power, or the power of emotions, which could relate to hockey as well. But at the same time, we have to recognize that Sanji mentioned his body feeling strange, and something has to come of that, right? So that, of course, could be straight up that Sanji's flames are enhancements, and that's going to be officially official sometime soon. Or Oda could play both hands at the same time and make Sanji's flames the result of his passions, and then give Sanji a different genetic, a latent enhancement that he did actually inherit, but hasn't awakened until now. Like, for instance, the hard bodies of the Vinsmoke children, which, if your body started to harden, it might make you feel weird. But yeah, I'm not trying to be a contrarian here. I just want to keep your mind open, because it was a very interesting choice on Oda's part to quasi-reveal the truth, but then have Sanji directly argue against it, because I would argue that the person who would understand their own powers best would be Sanji. And at any rate, I think this is at any rate, is that there is a component of passion within Sanji's flames, because as he's come to master his ability, he would need to know how, right? And he's explained on every step of the way that it relates to his passion, whether it's from, dealing with the Okama and Nami, and he knows best, I think. So even if it's a genetic enhancement, it's got a layer of emotion involved with activation, which honestly seems in direct contrast with whatever strange feeling Sanji has in his body, because it doesn't seem to be related to his emotional state, it just seems to be related to wearing the raid suit. So there's possibility. And here's another interesting point before we move along, right? So Sanji's body's feeling strange, and what that should tell you is that he has a power-up incoming. But how exactly is his Diable Jambe going to improve? We've already seen in Fishman Island an attack called Hell's Memories, and this is exactly how it's explained. After closing his eyes and remembering his painful time in Kamabaka Kingdom with the Okama, Sanji immediately becomes enraged. His whole body catches fire, similar to Thriller Bark. I'm pretty sure that this attack is sort of maxed out. Personally, I feel confident that the strangeness Sanji feels in his body is going to end up relating to a different power-up, some other way in which genetic modifications, which is likely true enhancements, is going to take effect on him. It could be as simple as his body becomes hard like his siblings, or Oda could get really, really creative, and that wouldn't be out of place either. But yeah, that's of course just talking about Sanji. The other half of the first half of this chapter was Zoro. And we have Kawamatsu say, "Boss Hyogoro, when Hiyori-sama offered that man Zoro Inma, there was a reason I didn't protest too hard." And then Hyogoro says, "Right, I see it too, it's peculiar. He may be a foreign pirate, but he reminds me so much of the former daimyo of Ringo when he was young." And they show a picture of Shimotsuki Ushimaru, who looks just like Zoro pretty much. The chapter is even titled this, "Two Peas in a Pod," would be Zoro and Ushimaru. Right down to their sword handling, it's uncanny. Kawamatsu then goes on to say, "Ushimaru-sama was a fantastic swordsman, a direct descendant of the god of the blade, Ryuma. And this young man was the one to finally return Shusui to Wano. Must be fate or something. After all, Ryuma was a one-eyed samurai." And they show him in the corner, and Ryuma looks exactly like Zoro, but awesome. We've been waiting for this for all of Wano. This is like community headcanon. I don't know of anybody who has argued against this. Everybody wants it, and it's another quasi-confirmed theory. But yeah, let's break this down real quick just in case anybody missed it, so that you know why this was community theory. Zoro is from Shimotsuke Village, where Koshiro had a dojo, taught people essentially the culture of Wano. Koshiro was a Shimotsuke. He was the son of Kozaburo, who was a master swordmaker who made the Wado Ichimonji and Inma. Meanwhile, at the very beginning of the story, Zoro is here, but there's so much mystery surrounding him. He has a lust, a desire to become a master swordsman. It's stated that he's defeated pretty much everybody. Even as a child, he reaches the dojo and finds that he still has something to learn, but we don't know who his parents are, but he's associated with Shimotsuke Village, which is now, it's Little Wano, is what it is outside of Wano. Then people put this together with the fact that Zoro looks exactly like Ryuma. So Zoro might be a descendant of Wano. And I feel the connection was made fairly apparent in Thriller Bark itself. Brooks sort of comments on both Ryuma and Zoro and how they're like two peas in a pod, right? They're just built the same. There's something similar about them from, their bodies itself, as if they're related. And even further, we know that Ushimaru had a pet, a companion fox, and Zoro's name, if you give it an extra R in Spanish, means fox, which could have been intentional, potentially. So the running headcanon, and this has been confirmed to various degrees in SBSs, is that there was a mass exodus from Wano somewhere around 2 decades ago when Orochi took over. This group then traveled to where Shimotsuke Kozuburo formed a village in the East Blue, because he left Wano 50 years ago. So there was 2 points of exit from Wano, and I think they all went to the same place. And going down the rabbit hole, without getting too much off topic, I just want to mention this, is I think that it's possible the Revolutionary Army could connect this and have facilitated this. Because it's pretty straightforwardly implied that Koshiro was a member of the Revolutionary Army. The way I see it is that either the people of Wano made contact with Koshiro and Shimotsuke Village, or the Revolutionary Army made contact with people from Wano by visiting there, no different than, say, the Whitebeard pirates, right? And then the Revolutionary Army had a plan, I guess, to create a samurai village in their jurisdiction away from Wano for their own reasons, which would just be an interesting train of thought. But yeah, keeping it on topic with Zoro, you just can't discount the fact that he looks just like Ryuma and he looks just like Ushimaru. So the chance that Zoro is the direct descendant of Ryuma, the son of Ushimaru, basically the heir daimyo of Wano, is just, probability is extremely high. But I'm curious if this can actually be confirmed in the story. Do they have things like DNA tests in order to 100% ensure that that is who Zoro is? Is this just what the characters in the story are going to assume? Is this what we're going to assume? Or is Oda going to reveal it in SBS? I'm curious. But keeping in line with my theme of quasi-confirmations in this chapter, it isn't 100% true yet. And I want people to just remember this. I've got a DM from O'Hara who basically had this crazy theory that, Oda will twist this in some way, in some unexpected way, where you think, oh, Zoro is the son of Ushimaru and the descendant of Ryuma, but maybe Toki sent a young Zoro when he was a baby to the future, and therefore he's not their descendant, he's their ancestor, or something silly like that. Now, I don't know if I believe this. I think that this is more want right now than more like substance, but it's possible because we don't know for sure. And the way that I actually want to take this or argue this, again, it's very open-ended. I personally, just to state this right here, I think that Zoro is the son of Ushimaru, but there's like a low-key theme in this first half of the chapter between Sanji and Zoro potentially, where there's this Sanji makes a point of arguing, I'm not, this flame isn't genetic enhancements, it's emotion, I'm human. And he argues this in a good way, I don't need these things to be really powerful. And then Zoro fights King, and we kind of assume, right, King is a swordsman, but that's not true. He carries a sword, but he doesn't respect the art of swordsmanship like Zoro does. Similar to how Queen doesn't respect the power of simply being human. Do you see the connection there? They're sort of both interested in strength outside of, say, humanity or spirituality. So in the same way that we argue that maybe Sanji's flames aren't genetic enhancement, it is the power of emotions, maybe you could say that there's still would be some significance for Zoro not being the direct descendant of Ryuma, this instead being some kind of coincidence. I know I'm playing devil's advocate, but I just want to throw that out there because this theme that we talked about just seems like sort of Oda's idea here. King is the very last member of an incredibly powerful race. By lineage, by genetics, he has an advantage. So then, similar to Sanji and Queen, Queen's like, I got all the technology, Sanji's like, I'm human, then it would be fitting for, well, King's, I've got all the genetic lineage stuff, and Zoro's actually born from nothing. Or tangentially, maybe still from Wano, but not the direct descendant of one of their daimyos. Or maybe we can talk about reincarnation, that Zoro possesses the soul of Ryuma, but isn't related to him genetically. A warrior spirit sort of thing. But yeah, guys, like I said, either way, man, this chapter was a huge W. As I read the Zoro lineage stuff as they were talking about Ryuma, man, that was like eye-opening. I was watching Brago's stream, actually. Just the look on his face that's how I felt, like, whoa, this is actually happening. I really don't know the significance of it, right? Aside from, just in general, it's pretty cool when characters are related to past great figures. Oda's used this before, right? Luffy's the son of Dragon, the grandson of Garb, those connections are just innately hype, and I think the same thing is true here. But as for taking it deeper than this, I don't see it yet, unless it's not true. But we'll wait. I'm still curious to know Zoro's true backstory. I mean, where were his parents? He's just orphaned, traveling around. I want to know more about that. I want to see in the story Oda definitively say this is why Zoro is the way that he is. And if Zoro is royalty, I just want to throw this out here as well. Sanji's been royalty, Luffy's obviously got his connections. I think you start to wonder about the other Straw Hats and what potential connections they could have. Nami's parents and her lineage is unknown. There's a lot of potential there. Frankie's parents were pirates, but which pirates is an interesting question as well. So if this ends up the way that Oda goes, I would expect it for more Straw Hats. But yeah, we haven't even actually talked about the fight itself. So in the last chapter, we saw Zoro and Sanji team up against Queen and King and attack them. We basically start this chapter with Queen and King getting up, shrugging it off. You didn't even harm us. We're the calamities because we have insane endurance or something to that effect. And so this is, they basically say, hey, everyone stay out of this fight. This is Zoro and Sanji's fight, or at least, and keep as well the other Beast Pirates away from the fight. We're about to find out just how strong Zoro and Sanji actually are. They are going head to head with Kaido's Yonko commanders. So, and I'm not expecting them to be blown away. So they're basically going to be Yonko commander level in my mind and probably the fans' minds after this, even if they lose. But I'm not sure that I expect them to lose. And that's incredibly impressive for Zoro in particular because of all the damage he has already sustained. Far, far more than King would have. So he's already fighting from a disadvantage. To even fight equally would be wow. And they also, Chopper said at the beginning of the chapter 2, is reminding us that Zoro's been revived with a medicine that has a downside. There's no way, I see no way that Zoro, either win or lose, right? It's going to be high difficulty. And so, almost guaranteed, right? Zoro's going to be on the verge of death after this. The last time this happened, they were incredibly lucky that Kuma was secretly an ally that was rooting for them. This time, I almost guarantee you, they are not going to have the same luxury. So for Zoro to be in that state, how the Strats are going to deal with that, save him, what will happen after this is I'm so excited for that. And I also haven't talked about King. Some of the language in this chapter, I can't wait for the official because I just want to be sure. I want that other translation to sort of compare with just the minute language. It really seems to matter. But as Queen says, seeing Sanji's fire abilities, he assumes that Sanji has been genetically augmented with some sort of fire genes. And then the word that he chooses, the race that he chooses, which we've never heard of before, is Lunarian, and then it pans to King. So it's okay, King is a Lunarian. The Luna part of that, meaning moon, is very interesting. Does it suggest that King's race is originally from the moons? Notice King also has wings, and the other winged people that we know of, the Skypians, the Shandians, Shandorans, they're from the moon too. The language here though, man, it's so interesting. Marco is thinking this, and translation obviously important, let's note that, let's read it. I thought only Mary Joie was above the red line. Whitebeard says, I'm talking about the distant past. Back then, God's land was up there. Marco says, when did you start believing such crap, Pops? And then Marco, right after this, asks Izo, do you believe in God? This is so vague, it just, oh man, I have to know. Let's read it again. Marco thinks, I thought only Mary Joie was above the red line. I'm gonna be honest with you, my first thought, Lunarian, Luna, moon, is that there once existed either above the red line or before there was a red line, a moon that orbited very close to the planet. That is my first thought. We've seen something similar to this, mind you. In a cover story, Capone's cover story, there was a small planetoid object which drew his ship up, and it's still mysterious to this day. But the first thought I had was, I thought only Mary Joie was above the red line, was that in the distant past there was a huge moon that orbited around the planet, and that would be where you would find the Lunarians. And it was called God's land. You could even take this further, right? That maybe the red line is made out of this now destroyed moon. On the other hand, there's an implication that the red line has always been there, even back in ancient times, so it wasn't created like many current headcanons state. But I don't know, I don't think that Whitebeard is the ultimate source of expertise here. There could be things that he does not know. But yeah, the more straightforward interpretation is simply that the red line was there since ancient times, and before Mary Joie sat upon there, it was called, or there was a thing that existed. Keep in mind, it's not like oh wow, this Lunarians lived on top of the red line. No, it was like it's called something unique. It existed above the red line. They didn't live on top of the red line, they lived in God's land. Whatever that means. Side note, it also reminds me of God Valley. And I just, is there a connection there? I don't know. And lastly, there is a quasi-confirmed theory from the last chapter, just something that I speculated that just felt right. But it's more directly hinted at in this chapter that the people that lived in God's land, most likely King's race, were probably considered gods. And Marco asks, ask Izo, do you believe in gods? Clearly directly referring to King's race. So they're brought up as essentially as the gods before the celestial dragons. And it makes even more sense why the celestial dragons would sort of want to take their place in the world, and in the process, killing most of them off. But yeah, guys, I don't have much more to say on this. To be quite honest with you, I need to know. The moon connection itself should not be a thing that goes below your notice, right? Kozuki, on their clan symbol, is a crescent moon. It's in the name itself. The symbols of the sun and the moon is just something that's very important to the world of One Piece in ways it could go in many different ways, and this just seems like more of the same. The next part of the chapter focused on the Mink, Sulong, Inuarashi, and Nekomamushi. I really liked the Inuarashi Jack dialogue. I think that it had a lot of power. There's also some death flags in here. Inuarashi in Sulong says, we endured a lot to reach this decisive battle. Our millennia-old city was razed to the ground. But the dawn of the world is finally upon us. We don't care if we have to lay down our lives to usher it in. I think that a lot of people are just kind of assuming that Sulong Inuarashi is going to defeat Jack, and that may be true. But there's also downsides to Sulong that have the community, I think, has mostly forgotten about. There's a limit to how much you can use the power, and what happens after that could be chaotic, and it could result in Inuarashi's death, which would be fitting as it seems as though the Scabbards are falling one by one. That fight was in a heavy contrast to Nekomamushi and Perospero. The scene was also really good. I loved the dialogue about Pedro, where Nekomamushi says, the full moon is bright tonight. Pedro, just pour yourselves a drink and watch. And he tells Perospero, this is the last full moon you will ever see. Big tongue. The big tongue part 2. I believe this has already been hinted at or stated as like the belief of the people of Wano, but it's like heaven or the afterworld exists on the moon, which is interesting with all the moon stuff we've been talking about, so I just want to point that out real fast. But where I feel like Jack versus Inuarashi is like a good fight, right? I just don't see Perospero in that same way. I just think Nekomamushi is going to wash him. So either I've underestimated Perospero, I don't personally think so. So something interesting has to happen with that fight. Is Nekomamushi going to kill Perospero? No. Will he defeat him? Probably. But will he kill him? No. So, but he intends on killing him. So I kind of wonder about Big Mom. Is Big Mom gonna, or the Big Mom Pirates gonna arrive just in time to save Perospero's life, drawing out the fight further and potentially also leaving Nekomamushi in a vulnerable state like maybe Inuarashi is. That's just what's on my brain right now. I just feel like Oda is not done with the twists and turns regarding these fights. It seems really straightforward, right? It seems like Inuarashi and Nekomamushi are going to win, and that's just what's going to happen. I think that there might be layers left. If you ask me, if the Big Mom Pirates show up just in time to save Perospero's life, that would be a perfect entrance, and they have to enter at some point in time. If they don't, I will not be happy. The next scene focused on Fukurokuju versus Raizo. Again, we have mention of the Scabbards representing ghosts, which, I think that they die and come back as ghosts. So here's another mention of that, potentially. I've seen some people counter-argue, you're thinking about it too much. It's just meant to be sort of symbolic. We'll see. But Raizo says that everyone needs time to mature. Even us misfits eventually became samurai. Wano itself will shape Momonosuke-sama's growth. We won't let you take that hope away. And then we reach the end of the chapter, and man, I wish I hadn't read the spoilers this week. I read the spoilers every week, right? But if I had seen this with Luffy facing Momonosuke, for a moment I might have believed that Momonosuke was Kaido. And then you scroll down, and you see Momo. I can't remember exactly what I said after Shinobu and Momonosuke had a conversation about aging him, but I think that I said that I thought that Momonosuke would get aged. And my reason at the time was that I think that Momonosuke's dragon form is going to be, or could be, important. Oda's gone out of his way to sort of not show Momonosuke in dragon form. Vegapunk's failed quote-unquote artificial fruit, he has not shown that in front of the Beast Pirates, and more specifically in front of Kaido. Now that will happen. And I'm just expecting some information to be revealed about what dragons really are. I'm just telling you that there is a reason why Vegapunk created that particular artificial fruit based on Kaido's fruit, and that in addition to this, they also tried to recreate actual dragons. There's a reason. The things that the government is interested in all have a kind of theme that they think these things are powerful, like recreating giants, recreating devil fruits. This particular power of a dragon, there's world lore here. And having Momonosuke show up as another full-grown dragon will probably lead to that. Kaido's probably gonna say something to the effect of, wow, you're a dragon like me. I thought I was the only one that had so-and-so historically important world-changing power. Something like that. And will also confirm, just how failed is Vegapunk's fruit, because it really doesn't seem like a failure. And that in and of itself is an interesting fact, that he withheld that information. Is it an ancient weapon? It could be, or something else. That's why I think it was important to age Momonosuke, is because of his dragon form. I think that him being a full-grown dragon is going to matter. At the very least, because dragons are, we see Kaido, he's literally carrying an island. And he himself had a conversation with Big Mom, which really hyped up his fruit too. But I also stand by with what I said before as well, that Momonosuke may be 28 years old in body, but he is not 28 years old in experience or, in spirit. I mean, he's an 8-year-old kid, okay? He is not all of a sudden going to be ready to rule Wano. I think any implication of that is just, it does not sit well with me, even if that's what Oda chooses to do. I might be on the wrong side here, where I'm picking a losing battle, basically. But I think that Momonosuke, he wanted to be aged, and it makes him feel better, but it really has changed very little for him himself. He's not all of a sudden going to be fighting as an equal with Kaido, even as a dragon. I don't believe that. And I also think that it is unfair, just as a story and just based, Momonosuke's 8, man. Grow up naturally. You don't need to be aged 28 years. You've just lost 20 years of your life. So, regardless of this happening here, I think that Oda's going to find a way, eventually, to revert Momonosuke's age back. Probably through Bonnie, but when that's going to happen is interesting. It's basically, it could happen in Wano if the Revolutionary Army shows up or something, Bonnie with them, or much, much later in the story, but that's what I expect. Man, this last scene, seeing Momonosuke, wow moment. And it's going to be hilarious too, right? Because Momonosuke is going to try to do the same thing to Nami and or Robin, but he's a grown man now, so that's going to be weird. Also, he's just like a man, but he's probably going to act like an 8-year-old. It's just genius, right? Of the long term, how much this could just improve and add value to the story. Outside of the moment itself, which was hype. And Shinobu's crying probably because before Momonosuke transformed into a dragon, he looks just like Odin. But I guarantee you that even though he looks like Odin, he will not act like Odin. Not yet. Which by itself would be funny. All of this is going to have huge significance though, because the people of Wano are going to see Momonosuke looking like Odin. They're going to see him as a giant dragon, and essentially combines their two rulers, right? Kaido is like this mystified, mystical creature that rules over Wano as a dragon, and Odin is sort of like the human component of the shogun, and Momonosuke is these two things in appearance combined. In appearance, but not in essence yet. Which gets me back to Raizo's comments and why I think that they're relevant. Everyone needs time to mature is what he says. Even us misfits eventually became samurai. Not immediately, but eventually. Wano itself will shape Momonosuke's growth. I think this is a low-key hint that I really hope this is where Oda's going with it. That, Momonosuke is all of a sudden older, but he still needs time to mature. And I hope the story ends up getting back to that. But we'll obviously see. Momo has, for hundreds of chapters now, it was foreshadowed hundreds of chapters ago, sort of been frustrated that he wasn't older. He thought being older would solve all of his problems. And I think the appropriate theme from this point forward is for Momonosuke, and this is the only way that he would know this, is to now that he's older realize being older wasn't what he needed. What he needed was experience. He needed time. It's actually very interesting that Momo has aged in two respects, but neither have truly allowed him to grow, which is he was sent to the future. He literally traveled across time, but doesn't count, and now his body has literally been aged, but again, it doesn't count. Which leads back to Raizo's comment, Wano itself will shape Momonosuke-sama's growth, meaning Momonosuke's actual experience right now during Wano. But yeah, this chapter was just insane. It was so action-packed. It took me a long time to sort of like process the chapter, relax, and sit down to do the review. But this 10 out of 10 again. I feel bad for anybody who's not enjoying Wano because this is just top tier, man. The peak fiction. I say that unironically. But as always, I'm curious as to what you guys think, whether you noticed something from the chapter that I might have missed. Just share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video, subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content, and as always guys, have a wonderful day.